It's a strange thing to think about. Tens of thousands of years ago, people went deep into the earth. They squeezed through tight passages. They crawled on their bellies through mud and rock. They went into total darkness, a silence so complete you could hear your own blood. And they did it with nothing but a flickering torch made of animal fat. Why? To paint. They painted on the cold, damp walls of caves. They painted huge bulls, delicate horses, herds of bison. They painted lions and woolly mammoths. They painted strange geometric signs, and most hauntingly, they painted their own hands. They left these images in the deepest, most inaccessible parts of the world. And then they left. For thousands of years, these paintings waited in the dark. Now we see them. And the first question that hits us is a simple one. Why did they do it? There's no single easy answer. We can't just ask them. The people who made these marks are long gone. All we have are the clues they left behind, and those clues point to something deep about what it means to be human. It's a story about the evolution of our minds. Before we get to the why, we have to understand the who and the what. The people who did this were not brutish cavemen. They were people like us. Homo sapiens. They had the same brains, the same bodies. They lived during the Upper Paleolithic period, what we often call the Late Ice Age. The world was colder. Massive glaciers covered much of the land. They were hunter-gatherers. Their entire world revolved around the animals they hunted and the plants they gathered. Their lives were short and often hard. And what did they paint? Mostly animals. These big animals. The ones that were important for survival, like bison, horses, and deer. But they also painted the dangerous ones, cave lions, bears, woolly rhinos. Sometimes the animals are just standing there like portraits. Other times they seem to be moving, running, a herd in full stampede. The skill is incredible. With a few simple lines, they captured the essence of an animal. The curve of a bison's back, the flick of a horse's tail. They also painted symbols. Dots, lines, grids, and strange shapes called tectiforms that look a bit like huts or traps. And then there are the hands, hundreds of them. They would place a hand on the wall and blow pigment over it, leaving a negative outline. It's a signature, a way of saying, I was here. The location is maybe the biggest clue. They didn't paint in the front of the caves where they lived. They didn't decorate their homes. They went deep. They went to places that were hard to reach, even dangerous. This wasn't casual doodling. This was a serious, deliberate act. It took effort. It took planning. It was important. So important that they risked their lives to do it. To understand why, we have to go back to the human brain. The ability to make a picture is not simple. It requires a huge cognitive leap. It's called symbolic thought. It's the ability to understand that one thing can stand for another. This line, the smudge of red ochre on a wall, is not just a smudge. It is a bison. Your brain makes that connection. This is the same mental hardware you need for language. In language, the sound horse is not a horse. It's a symbol that we all agree means that four-legged animal. The ability to create symbols, whether with sound or with paint, is what separates us from other animals. It allows us to think about things that aren't right in front of us. We can talk about the hunt that happened yesterday. We can plan the hunt for tomorrow. We can tell stories about the great ancestor who killed a giant bear. This new way of thinking exploded during the Upper Paleolithic. It's when we see the first real evidence of art, of music. They found bone flutes, of personal adornment beads and pendants, and of elaborate burials. Humans weren't just surviving anymore, they were creating meaning. They were building a culture. The cave paintings were a huge part of that. They are the physical evidence of a mind that had woken up to a new reality, a world of symbols. So, with that in mind, let's look at the theories. The oldest and most famous idea is called hunting magic. The idea is simple. If you paint a bison on the wall, you gain some kind of power over the real bison out in the world. It's a form of sympathetic magic. By capturing the image of the animal, you capture its spirit. Maybe they would throw spears at the paintings, a kind of ritual practice for the real hunt. This theory makes a lot of sense at first. They were hunters, animals were life and death. A successful hunt meant the group would eat. A failed hunt meant starvation. Anything that could give them an edge, even a magical one, would be worth trying. And many of the animals they painted were the ones they ate. Archaeologists find the bones of reindeer and bison in their living sites, and those same animals are on the cave walls. But there are problems with this theory. For one, the animals on the walls don't always match the bones in the trash heaps. In some caves, they painted a lot of lions and rhinos, animals they almost certainly didn't hunt for food. And what about the ones they did eat? In some regions, reindeer were the main source of food, but they barely show up in the paintings. Also, if it was about practicing a hunt, you'd expect to see more paintings of animals being killed. You'd expect to see spears sticking into them or animals caught in traps, but that's actually very rare. Most of the animals are shown whole and healthy, and the hunting magic theory doesn't explain the geometric signs or the handprints at all. So, while it was probably part of the story, it can't be the whole story. This led researchers to a different idea. An idea that takes into account the strangeness of the locations and the abstract symbols. This is the theory of shamanism. A shaman is a spiritual figure in a hunter-gatherer society. A person who can travel to the spirit world to communicate with spirits, heal the sick, or ensure a good hunt. How do they travel to the spirit world? Through altered states of consciousness. They might use rhythmic drumming, chanting, dancing, fasting, or maybe even psychoactive plants. The deep cave, according to this theory, was the shaman's portal. It was the place where the veil between our world and the spirit world was thin. Think about it. You crawl for an hour in total blackness. You are deprived of all your normal senses. The only light is the flickering, dancing flame of your torch. The shadows play tricks on your eyes. The acoustics are strange. A drip of water can sound like a footstep. A whisper can echo like a shout. In this state, your brain starts to do weird things. Neuroscientists know this. When you're in a state of sensory deprivation or a trance, your brain starts to generate its own images. These are called entoptic phenomena. And what do they look like? They look like dots, grids, zigzags, and swirling lines. Exactly the kind of geometric signs we see on the cave walls. The shamans in their trance would see these patterns first. They were the beginning of the journey. As the trance deepens, the shaman tries to make sense of these abstract shapes. The brain tries to turn them into something familiar. A curved line might start to look like the back of a bison. A grid might become the hide of an animal. The shaman would then see visions of animals and spirits emerging from the rock itself. The cave wall wasn't a blank canvas. It was a membrane, a living surface. The spirits were already in the rock. The shaman's job was not to create an image from scratch, but to help the spirit come out. To trace its outline, to make it visible to others. This theory explains a lot. It explains the deep hidden locations. They were sacred spaces, not art galleries. It explains the geometric signs. They were maps of the trance state. It explains why the artist used the natural bumps and cracks in the rock. A bulge in the wall becomes the shoulder of a bull. A crack becomes a spear. They weren't painting on the wall, they were painting with the wall. The art wasn't just a picture of an animal. It was the animal's spirit made manifest. The handprints could be the shaman's touch, a way of connecting with the spirits in the rock. This is a powerful idea. It connects the art to a system of belief, to a way of understanding the cosmos. It feels more complete than the simple hunting magic theory. It acknowledges the deep spiritual life these people must have had. But there are other ways to look at it. Maybe it was less about magic and more about information. Think of the caves as the first schools, or the first libraries. In a society without writing, how do you pass down knowledge? How do you teach a young hunter what a mammoth looks like up close? How do you explain the different kinds of deer, their migration patterns, their behavior? You tell stories, and you show pictures. The paintings could have been a kind of visual encyclopedia of the Ice Age world. A teaching tool. The elders would take the young initiates deep into the cave. In the flickering light, they would tell the stories of the animals. This is the great bull. See his horns. He is powerful, but he is also a source of life. This is how he moves. This is where you find him. The act of going into the cave would be a rite of passage. The knowledge passed down would be secret, sacred. It would bind the group together. Some paintings seem to show stories. In the famous Lascaux cave in France, there's a scene. A bison has been disemboweled, its guts spilling out. A man, drawn as a simple stick figure, is lying on the ground next to it. He appears to be dead or injured. Next to him is a bird on a stick. What does this mean? Is it a story of a hunt that went wrong? Is it a myth about a creator spirit? We don't know. But it's clearly a narrative. It's information being shared. This theory of information storage doesn't contradict the shamanism theory. They can work together. A shaman could be the teacher. The stories could be about both the natural world and the spirit world. The lessons could be both practical. This is how you hunt, and spiritual, this is our place in the world. This leads to another, related idea. The paintings were about creating and strengthening the community. Humans are social creatures. Our survival has always depended on our ability to cooperate. A ritual is one of the most powerful tools we have for building social bonds. Think about any major ritual today, a wedding, a graduation, a religious service. These events bring people together. They create a shared experience, a shared identity. They make a group feel like a group. The journey into the cave and the creation of the paintings could have been a powerful social ritual. It wasn't something one person did alone. It was likely a group activity. Some people had to carry the torches. Some had to grind the pigments, the red and yellow ochre, the black manganese. Others had to build the scaffolding to reach the high ceilings, and maybe one or two skilled artists did the actual painting, while others watched, chanted, or sang. The process itself was what mattered, the shared struggle of getting into the deep cave. The shared awe of seeing the images appear by torchlight. This experience would forge an unbreakable bond between the members of the group. It created a collective memory. It reinforced their identity. We are the people of the Horse Clan. This is our cave. These are our stories. The art wasn't just on the wall, it was in their minds, a foundation for their society. It separated use from theme. And what about the simplest idea of all? Art for art's sake. Maybe they just did it because it was beautiful, because they had an aesthetic sense. Because they felt a deep human need to create, to make their mark, to represent their world. There is no doubt that these paintings are beautiful. The artists were masters of their craft. They understood perspective, shading, and movement. They had a style. In Chevet Cave, the paintings are over 30,000 years old, and they are breathtaking. The artists used the contours of the rock to give the animals a three-dimensional feel. A panel of lions looks like it was drawn by a single master artist. It's hard to look at that and not think that a love of beauty was part of the motivation. But the art for art's sake argument falls apart when you remember the context. If you just want to make something beautiful, why do it in a dark, dangerous, inaccessible cave? Why not decorate the tools you use every day? Why not paint the walls of your shelter where everyone can see it? They did some of that. They carved beautiful patterns on spear throwers and tools. But the great works, the masterpieces, were hidden away in the deep earth. This suggests that beauty wasn't the primary goal. The beauty was likely a byproduct of a much more serious purpose. The art had a job to do. It had a function. Whether that function was magical, spiritual, educational, or social, it was more than just decoration. The skill and beauty were important because the task was important. You use your best skills for your most sacred work. So where does that leave us? We have all these theories: hunting, magic, shamanism, teaching, social ritual. Which one is right? The answer is probably all of them, at different times and different places for different reasons. The tradition of cave painting lasted for over 25,000 years. That's an immense span of time. To put it in perspective, the entire history of writing is only about 5,000 years old. It's highly unlikely that the meaning and purpose of the paintings stayed the same for all that time. The reasons for painting in Chevet Cave 32,000 years ago might have been very different from the reasons for painting in Lascaux 17,000 years ago. But it's also likely that these different functions were all tangled up together. Human culture isn't neat and tidy. Our beliefs and actions are layered with multiple meanings. A ritual can be a religious experience, a way to teach the young, and a way to bond the community all at the same time. Imagine a ceremony. The clan gathers. The shaman leads a group of young initiates into the sacred cave. The journey is difficult, a test of their courage. Deep inside, in a great chamber, the shaman enters a trance. He communicates with the horse spirit that lives in the rock. Guided by his vision, he traces the outline of the horse on the wall, renewing the clan's bond with the spirit world. This act ensures the horse herds will be plentiful in the coming year. As he paints, he tells the old stories. He teaches the initiates about the nature of the horse, both its physical body and its powerful spirit. The whole group watches their shared awe and fear in the dancing darkness, forging them into a single, strong community. In that one event, you have shamanism, hunting magic, teaching, and social bonding all happening at once. The painting is the focal point for all of it. It's not just a picture, it's an event. It's a technology for holding a society together. To truly appreciate what they did, we also have to think about the how. This wasn't easy. The paint they used came from the earth. They found lumps of iron oxides for reds, yellows, and browns. They used manganese dioxide or charcoal for black. They had to grind these minerals into a fine powder. Then they mixed the powder with a binder, something to make it stick to the wall. They might have used cave water, animal fat, blood, or plant juices. They applied the paint with their hands. You can see their fingerprints on the walls. They also made simple brushes out of animal hair or twigs. For the famous hand stencils, they would chew up the pigment into a liquid paste, put a hand on the wall, and spray the paint from their mouths. They made crayons out of solid chunks of pigment, and they had to see in the dark. They used stone lamps, simple bowls of carved stone with a wick made of moss or lichen, fueled by rendered animal fat. These lamps gave off a soft, flickering light, much like a candle. They would have filled the caves with smoke and shadows. In some places, the ceilings were too high to reach, so they built scaffolding. Archaeologists have found the holes in the walls where the wooden beams of their scaffolding were placed. This was a major undertaking. It required knowledge, resources, and cooperation. It tells us that these paintings were not an idle pastime. They were central to their culture. They were a serious investment of time and energy. So why did humans start painting on cave walls? They did it because their brains had evolved to the point where they had developed the capacity for symbolic thought. They could see the world not just as a place of things, but as a place of meanings. And they did it because they had to. They lived in a world that was dangerous and uncertain. They needed a way to understand it, a way to feel some measure of control, a way to hold their communities together, a way to pass their knowledge and wisdom to the next generation. The paintings were a tool for thinking, a tool for communicating, a tool for believing. They were the external storage for the human mind before writing was ever invented. They were the hard drive of Paleolithic culture. When we look at a painting of a horse in Lascaux, we are not just looking at a picture of an animal. We are looking at the fossilized evidence of a thought. We are seeing the moment when our ancestors stopped just living in the world and started trying to make sense of it. They were grappling with the big questions. What is our relationship with the animal world? What are the hidden forces that shape our lives? How do we live together as a group? How do we face the great mysteries of life and death? We can't know the exact answers they came up with. The specific stories and myths are lost to time, but the impulse to ask the questions and to answer them by making marks, that is still with us. It's the same impulse that leads us to write books, make films, compose music, and create art today. The people who went into those caves thousands of years ago were not so different from us. They were looking for meaning in a complex world. The cave paintings are the oldest and most profound record of that search. They are a message to us across an unimaginable gulf of time. The message is simple. We're here, we saw the world, we wondered about it, and we left a mark.